Good morning from Lima, Peru. It's Joe Self, and I am here with Lisa Braithwaite today. We are so excited to be talking to her about communication talent today on Unique Genius in 33. I really couldn't think of someone better than Lisa maybe to do this because I know what she does for a living, and she's going to tell you that in just a second. So I just want to say thank you all for listening to our recording today, and I'm going to let Lisa introduce herself so we can get to know her a little bit better. You ready, Lisa?
I'm ready. I am a public speaking coach and trainer. So I work with individuals and I work with groups to help them build their speaking skills, and mostly in order to build their businesses through speaking. So I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and management level people. And so I do individual coaching as well as corporate training. And that's not my usual, like I just totally blew my normal little, speech. Which is funny coming on to talk about communication where I'm like, what do I do again? But for some reason I felt like, well, I have to make it like fit with communication, and then I just blew it. So anyway, well, it's morning here. It's morning here in California. Give me a break.
No worries. So what's your top 5, Lisa?
Top 5 are, okay, wake up my brain. Activator, positivity, communication, maximizer, and adaptability. My top 5.
Awesome. Love it. Fantastic. So as we had our little bit of a chat earlier, what we do here is I'm going to say that we're talking about the communication theme today. And according to Gallup, people exceptionally talented in the communication theme generally find it easy to put their thoughts into words. They are good conversationalists and presenters. Generally, I know, right? You just described that like, what was I saying? Why was I saying that? Do you know, I think my maximizer, because I have communication at number 4, so I have it in my top 5 as well. And there are times where if I can't find the right word to say, it's like I can't say anything at all. So, yeah, I get very particular about the words I want to use sometimes. Yep. So we always go through a little bit of celebrate and evaluate for each of the talents. So Lisa, I'm going to read off the 4 things that are just awesome about communication and things you should be celebrating. And I'd love to know if they resonate with you. So you should celebrate your ability to tell a captivating story, your clear explanations, being a good sounding board for others, and your verbal processing skills. How does that sound to you?
Yep, that's me. That sounds like me.
Resonate pretty well?
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. So then to evaluate, when we talk about evaluating, what we're wanting to do is sort of keeping ourselves in check if we might be getting on the raw side of a talent, or that it may not be serving it at its highest power. So some questions to ask yourself might be, am I listening as much as I'm talking? Am I missing what others are saying because I'm planning what to say next? I'm totally guilty of that one. Am I being clear and concise, or am I repeating myself too much? So do those resonate with you?
Yeah, I would say that thinking about the next thing to say and talking more than listening, those two in particular, I became aware of those a long time ago. And I think maybe because I'm a coach, I've kind of trained myself a little bit.
Sure.
To listen more and also to be more present. This is part of what I teach. When I teach people public speaking, one of the things that I teach is to be present, because literally so many people stand on stage or stand in front of a group and don't even hear what's coming out of their own mouth.
Right.
Because their mind is racing, and they're not present with what's happening in the room. All they can think about is, am I funny? Am I smart? Am I whatever, right? Am I doing it right? Am I getting people's attention? So they're so up here that they're not present at all with what's happening in the room. So I can't very well, excuse me, there's gardening happening outside. I can't very well tell other people to be present if I'm not being present. So I've really worked on that a lot. I've worked on these problems of
I think your microphone is scratching your zipper. I think your microphone is scratching your zipper because I keep hearing and it's going in rhythm.
I'm going to unzip a little bit.
Because it's just hitting right up there by the hood. All right.
Yeah,
that'll work. Thank you. I want to be able to hear what you have to say. I mean, my goodness, this is all about communication.
I'm sorry. I know. Gosh, so far I'm getting off to a bad start here.
No, but I think what you said about being a coach, right? We put these questions out there as evaluations because what do? We go from a talent to a strength. So it doesn't mean we're at the highest level of our talent all the time. And we've got to be able to think through those things. And so, my coping mechanism, as I'll call it, for, my strategic, my activator, my ideation, I get so excited by what people are saying. And then I see where they're going and I want to just jump in and finish their sentence and keep going. Right. And so the interrupting and not listening as much as I'm speaking, I literally have to go, I'm so sorry.
So
and like physically put my finger
not necessarily interrupting. As I'm interrupting you right now, it's not necessarily interrupting. There's a communication style called overlapping. And
then I'm an overlapper.
I'm an overlapper. And this is my family is like this. This is how I've always communicated. You start to sense that somebody's coming to the end of their idea. And so you jump in and there's like a flow. It's like this, right? Now that feels normal to me and it feels normal to you, but other people are like, what are you doing? Right?
I don't know if you brought it up or if my other friend brought it up, but there was actually an article recently written about communication styles and it was about Jewish families. Yes. And that what you're just talking about, the overlapping is truly just the way they talk, where they just kind of layer their communication on top of each other. And it sounds like arguing or sounds like people aren't listening, but that's just culturally how they Jewish. Communicate.
Yeah. So my dad isn't Jewish. However, my mom is Jewish and we have a lot of Jewish traits in my family, but also my dad, I don't know my dad's top 5, but I'm guessing communication is up there in the top 5 as well. He's also a real verbal processor and very good communicator. Same with my brother. So I think that this communication style of overlapping, to me, it creates a flow in a conversation. But to people who aren't overlappers, I've seen people just go like stop cold when I start saying something, and then I'm like, okay, not an overlapper. I better I have to stop and wait until they indicate that they're done.
Right. Yeah. It happens, especially when I'm excited about the conversation, right? Like,
absolutely. Yep. And you're just so excited to jump in and, and some people consider that rude.
Right.
I just consider that normal.
Awesome. So perfect. So great. I love that these, sort of resonate with you. Going to move into our normal set of questions. So talk to me about what you love about your communication. Where does it bring you joy? How does it serve you?
Well, in a very literal way, and tell me if my microphone is knocking because I've kind of rearranged some things here.
Okay.
Hopefully you're not getting too much cleavage.
No, I think we're doing a lot better. I think
quite literally, I'm a speaker and a trainer. So I love performing. I started out as a little kid always loving to perform. And whether that was singing or dancing or writing plays or whatever it was, I've always loved performing in some way or another. So what I love about communication, about my particular communication strength, is getting on stage or in a conference room or wherever it is and helping people learn to enjoy public speaking. So I love it. But partly I also have positivity up there. So I've got communication and positivity side by side. And so I'm also a bit of a cheerleader and a rah. This is so fun. Let's all do it. So the combination of communication and positivity together, I'm really good at bringing people to the dark side and helping them find the fun and enjoyment and audience connection, because I use communication as a way to connect with an audience. And so that's what I teach, and my clients love, walk away going, oh, I never thought I could love public speaking or find it fun and enjoyable, and now I do. So that's probably what I love the most about my talent, is my ability to sort of create a contagious excitement about communicating.
Right. No, I can totally appreciate that. We're making this about you, but I'm like, I can totally appreciate that. I think of myself as a messenger. I mean, with my passion for strengths and everything, I always think of myself as a messenger and branding and helping people in their voice, right? So communication is very much an underlying driving factor to why I do what I do as well.
I think I need to start calling myself a messenger. Thanks. I'm going to steal that from you.
You're welcome. You're happy to share.
The public speaking messenger. How's that for my new brand?
I love it. So, other side of the coin, what is it about your communication that can get in the way or drive you a little bit nuts?
Definitely. Having to talk things out. So I was just telling you 5 minutes ago, my mom is in hospice, and so I've been basically living at my brother's house for 2 weeks, but I'm home now for a couple days. But he and I were just talking about this the other day. There was something, all these things going on with my mom, that we're trying to indicate, where is she on this path, of pre-active dying or active dying, all these
all the fun hospice stuff.
The terms and all the stuff you learn in this process are fascinating. And, we're talking about stuff, and I said this to him, in our conversation, I need to process out loud. Yes. But this also drives me crazy, because not everybody, number one, needs to process out loud, and not everybody wants to hear me process out loud.
Well, I think they don't understand it.
Right. They don't understand it.
Like, so I don't understand how it works.
I have to talk, not that I can't figure stuff out on my own. I mean, I am an entrepreneur, and I sit here alone day after day working. And I have some accountability partners, and sometimes it's also writing. So typing things out also helps me process. But not everybody does that or wants to listen to me process. Not everybody is a verbal processor.
Right.
And so that can be hard, because I need that, and it helps me a lot to be able to do that. But not everybody is, wants to do that with me.
So I'm going to ask you a question, because when I tell people that same thing, that I have to hear myself out loud. So what I'm curious about is, do you have people tell you, well, why don't you just record what you're saying and then type it out? Like, why don't you just talk to yourself in a corner? What is your response to that tactic?
That's interesting. And I won't say I haven't tried it. I have, occasionally we'll record things. I don't know. Maybe it's the active process of my wheels turning as I talk out loud. Yeah. It's not.
But I need the connection. It's a conversational process for me. Even if the other person doesn't say anything, just how they react to it or how they absorb the information helps me go through it. Like, if I'm explaining it to someone, it's so much different than me just saying it out loud. Like, if it's going to be.
So like what you and I are doing right now, I'm like, oh yes, exactly. Right. So and communication isn't just talking. Communication is also listening. Excuse me.
Right. It's a dialogue for me. It's a conversation.
Exactly. I know within Clifton Strengths. Within Clifton Strengths, it's sort of described more as a skill of talking to me, it seems like. But communication for real in the real world is a dialogue, ideally, if you're doing it right. And so it helps me it helps me to get feedback, to hear back what somebody else is hearing me saying, or what somebody else, just the response from another person is part of the verbal processing. I could sit here and go blah 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 and talk to myself out loud alone like a weirdo, but it helps to have the feedback and the interaction. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a hard time explaining to people that me talking out loud is the same as me thinking in my head. Like it's not
Exactly.
it. So I was just curious if we share that out to you.
Yeah.
Great.
You froze up a little bit, so.
My internet is really acting up today.
Okay, I hear you now. You're okay. Yeah, I hear you now though, and I see you again.
What a day to have technology problems and communication
on the communication day. I know.
One day on the
day. My worst time of the year is Mercury retrograde. Every time it's Mercury retrograde, that's my worst time of the year as a communication person. When all the communication things are wrong and bad and confusing.
We just went through one. I totally feel you. I completely understand that. That's so funny. We're going to have to talk about that offline because that's hysterical. So where do you recognize, or how early in your life do you recognize communication showing up?
As I said, I've always been a performer. So, and I'm not sure how that necessarily fits with communication. I also have significance at like number 8 and woo at 7, or in my top 10. I also have significance in woo. So let's just say I have always loved, getting in front of a group and doing something. Sure. It's part of my thing.
Absolutely.
However, I mean, even when I was in high school, I was on the speech team. I was already writing. So, I also went, as I said, communication to me is speaking and listening and writing. Yeah. I mean, I really think of communication as being all of that stuff. And I was writing at a young age. I was writing poetry, right, and stuff like that. So I'm not even sure at what age that all started. Pretty sure though, I've always been a pretty articulate communicator. There are people way more now. Just having communication in my top 5 doesn't necessarily make me articulate. It just means that that's my. That's how you process one of my strong ways of, but I was, as a kid, I was pretty articulate, and I liked giving speeches, and I liked doing all that stuff at a pretty young age.
Did you get to sit next to the teacher's desk a lot like I did?
No.
That I would.
No, and I also, speaking about flip sides of this, I also was told to be quiet a lot because I'm so chatty. And not only, did I get in trouble for talking in class a lot, but I also have always had a voice that projects. So people could hear me across the school. They could hear me across the football field. So, I've always been like too loud, too talkative. So there's in school too, there's also that flip side, right? So I'm very comfortable performing and getting on stage and doing all these communication type things, but I also got in trouble for communication things when I was in school.
Yeah. I think that was probably the thing that was on every report card I ever had is if only she could just stop talking.
Stop talking and listen.
No, not happening. Fantastic. So if there's something that you wish other people would understand or know about communication, what would that be? And we talk about this as a way for like the needs of someone who is a communicator to help other people understand and see it with new eyes, like a fresh lens, right?
I think maybe what you and I were talking about before, just about, for a lot of us, the need to verbally process. And when you have people who are, say, deliberative,
or intellection,
or actually deliberative could also be really nicely combined with communication. I mean, I could see that.
Sure.
But okay, let's say something that's, more like intellection, ideation, I guess, with somebody who's almost the opposite and who's just like all up here all the time. And by the way, I also have those in my top 10. So I also have learner and intellection in my top 10, where I'm, also there's a lot of this. So I think I have a good balance, really. And especially my top 5, to me, especially as a speaking coach, I have the perfect top 5 for who I am as a person and a career. But I think probably the verbal processing is what I wish people knew more about, especially people who are more quiet and don't talk as much as I do. And I know I can probably be a real pain in the butt, but then I want people to communicate to me, if I'm talking too much, not listening or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you talk about that, my husband has intellection and deliberative and lots of head talents, like in his top, his bottom 5 are like my top 5. Basically, we're totally opposites. And all of his communication is an email, and I want to talk it out. And it's a constant back and forth trying to find the balance for that. So no, I can.
Yeah. How about this? My husband has empathy in his top 5, and it's literally my number 34. I've told you before about my low empathy.
Yeah. My empathy is kind of low as well. Harmony is my 34.
Right. And granted, we've been married for 30 years, 30 years this summer. So, we've worked it out. We've worked it out. But over time, but it is, and my positivity stands in for empathy quite a bit as a coach.
Sure.
Positivity and adaptability stand in a lot for empathy.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good point to bring up. I know we're talking about communication, but I think that's a great point to bring up is that how a combination of talents can mimic or look like another talent.
Yeah. And can, help you sort of navigate when you need that talent and it's not one of your real high strengths. There are often other, and I use, which I didn't mention before, but when I work with my speaking clients, I do strengths coaching with them as well. Right. I like to have them do the assessment and get their top 5, which I know is kind of going by the wayside now. Gallup is trying to sort of get everybody to just get your 34. But I use this in terms of speaking. So I ask people to do the assessment, and then we have one session just about how they can bring or how they are bringing their top 5 talents into speaking. So I also work through these talent themes a lot with my speaking clients as speaking strengths. Right.
No, I love how that is. And I mean, and I love how each talent brings its own style of communication to the table and what you can look at just from each talent from that perspective for communication.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. So our fun question, and before I ask the fun question, we've got a couple people on with us live right now. Ladies, if you have anything you'd like to ask Lisa or she's brought up that you'd like to share or just comment on, please feel free to use the chat or even feel free to bring yourselves up on your video and ask the question live. We're happy to do that. We've got about 8 minutes left or so, and I've got 2 questions left, but we'll see if they have anything they'd like to know from you. Last question about communication is, who would you consider as a famous or fictional character that represents communication for you?
First person who popped into my mind when you asked me this question was Mrs. Maisel. So anybody who's been watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's
actually based on Joan Rivers and her life, right? So if you know Joan Rivers, it's based on Joan Rivers and her life.
Yeah. And so as a comedian, as a performer, as a communicator, she has an incredibly unique style of communication, but that is how she literally processes everything out loud. And if you haven't seen it, the very first time she gets on stage, she's a little tipsy and she verbally processes what is happening in her life, and it turns into a comedy routine. So anyway, she really stands out to me as somebody who really embodies communication. And
as we mentioned earlier, the overlapper. Like, she comes from that overlapping family,
that overlapping Jewish family. Yeah. Very much so.
right? And when she's on fire and her communication is awesome. And it's also the thing that probably gets her in the most trouble as
Right,
well.
exactly. Can you imagine?
Right.
I mean, so if you've seen the show, she's married,
Right.
and then, and then she and her husband have conflicts and whatever. And I do think about, man, can you imagine being married to her? Because I feel sorry for my husband sometimes because so again, I just came home last night after being away for 2 weeks, staying up at my brother's house, caring for my mom. And I think I may have talked nonstop for a couple of hours straight, just processing everything and just telling him all the stuff that, like we've been texting and, what we don't really talk on the phone a lot. So, I just, blah, 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 blah. And this is the way it is in my house where,
Right.
although he was actually, because he hasn't seen me, I mean, we haven't seen each other in 2 weeks. So he also had a lot of stuff to tell me. And so we actually, it was, we had a great conversation, but I felt like there was so much stuff I needed to get out.
Right.
And sometimes I feel sorry for, the person married to the high communication person. But then you could say that about any of these, right? You could say anybody who has.
You could, absolutely.
Especially if you're very different. My husband is much more of a quiet, more introverted person. And I mean, I'm actually very introverted too when I'm not doing something like this.
Right.
But I could totally talk his ear off, and he would be, and then like 5 minutes in, he'd be like, what'd you say? What are you talking about? Like
Right.
he gets super distracted. So,
right.
So back to Mrs. Maisel. Can you imagine?
Can you imagine?
Her spouse.
I might be able to. So final question from me is a general question around strengths. For people out there who are just learning about their strengths or are still just dabbling, what would you want them to know the benefit of strengths has been for you?
Oh, the benefit of strengths to me is very clear. Once especially my top 5 and my top 10, once I could really once I could really see how these all fit together in my life and my work, it makes me understand myself so much better, first of all. And it helps me understand when I have a problem or I'm working through something, and especially in my business and dealing with entrepreneurship as many of us are, it really helps me not, how do I say this? Communication. And here I am, I'm stuck again. It helps me not be too hard on myself, I guess. It helps me not be too hard on myself for the things that I'm not good at, the things that are just not my strengths. It helps me understand. And I mean, it's not like I'm like, I'm going to use this as an excuse. I'm not good at this one thing, so forget about it. But it helps me understand and not be too hard on myself. And then it also helps me understand, like I mentioned just a minute ago, how I can bring the qualities of my top 5, how I can use those to stand in for other things. So, hey, empathy, super low. Discipline, super low. Discipline is 32. But you know what I have? I have maximizer and activator in my top 5. So activator and maximizer together kind of create a kind of discipline for me. So I feel like knowing my talents has really, first of all, helped me not be too hard on myself when I'm having a hard time with something, and also understand how to judge, what I have and make it work for things that I don't have. That's how it's been really strong for me.
Yeah, I love that you bring up the point of that sort of like letting yourself off the hook for certain things, right? Like not just beating yourself up over something. And I think that's something I have seen kind of continually in my work with people when they do finally open their full 34, especially if they've only been working with their top 5, when they open their 34 the first time, obviously everyone goes down to the bottom to see what their, talents are down at the bottom 5 or the very last one. And there's always this sense of like, oh, thank God. Like, I don't have to do this anymore. It's like, right? It's like, I don't know why I've been trying so hard all my life to be
You don't have to feel bad about yourself for something that is, I mean,
it's just not naturally the way you do things.
It's not your natural go-to. And I remind people too, you know, these are all strengths. These are, or talents, right? I mean, they're not all,
right. They're all talents.
It's all
we
something.
We
have them in all different orders, but they can't all be at the top. They can't all be at the top.
Right.
Something has to fall to the bottom. And for some of us, it's empathy and discipline. And some of the, like I said, don't have a single executing talent in my top 10, executing theme. And it's okay. We're all different, and it's okay to embrace where you know, what comes naturally to you and cultivate that and really embrace it and own it. And also, if you really want to figure out how to get, you know, better at your bottom 5, look at how your top 5 and top 10 can help you get there by using what you already have up here. So that's really useful to me to understand that and to teach my clients as well.
You remind me of a past client that I had who was an executive at a company in Mexico. And when we were first talking through his full 34, and I said, okay, so where do you draw the line for your dominant talents, right? And for most of us, that line is somewhere between 10 and 15. I claim my dominant ones at 12, right? And so he goes down, he's like, I'm at like 17 or 18. I was like, you're not. You're just not. And he's like, but I bet I can make them all dominant. I'm like, no, no, let's go back and rethink this. Let's talk about this a little bit more. And it, you know, a little exploration. And then he got it, right? And he was like perfectly comfortable to accept that 14 were his dominant talents. And then then we start working into supporting, right? So it's always fun to work through that with people, especially when it's like, no, but I can make them all awesome. And like, no, you don't.
That is kind of funny.
Make them all awesome.
And you know what? I'm not sure I've ever looked at where mine kind of cut off. But it's interesting when you say, I feel like right around 13. Yep, right around 13. Yeah. I just looked at mine, and that's about my cutoff right there. Yeah, that's about where I stopped.
Yeah, 12, 12 going. Well, and those ones that are supporting, right? And it's that question. So we'll share this with people on here right now, just learning moment that if you have your 34 and you want to know where your dominant talents start, you just really go like, I am always like this. Like I do this without ever thinking about it. It's just who I am. And the moment you go, yeah, I do that sometimes. As soon as you go, I do that sometimes, you know, but it's not like a default mode. That's where your line goes, right?
Yeah,
and that's
this is super clear for me, because like command is 13. Boom. 14 is connectedness. And I'm like, huh? You know, like really, I just like, it's very clear where I'm like, really? And then harmony is right after connectedness. And I'm like, yeah, you know, maybe
not
sometimes.
So much.
But I mean, it's very clear, like self-assurance, command. 12 is self-assurance, 13 is command. And then connectedness. And I'm like, not so much. So yeah, it's very clear.
Clear for you. Well, Lisa, it has been an absolute joy talking. Thank you so much for sharing all about your communication talent with us. Wrap this up. We're at a 3-minute cutoff today. And I just want to remind everyone this every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 Central. And we look forward to seeing you here next week as we go through the talent of. So have a great one. Thank you so much, Lisa, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye.